Good morning, 2R. Coming at you again just to give you a preview for what's ahead this upcoming week. We're moving on to a new chapter. We're looking at, I've got my textbook off to the side here, so I'm looking over at various things. Chapter 20, which is called Mass, Society, and Democracy. I need you to pay close attention to the assignments you get this week. We are not covering every section in this chapter. We're covering two of the four sections. So, assuming your page numbers match up with mine, Section 1 in Chapter 20 is called The Growth of Industrial Prosperity. So, it's going over the second industrial revolution. It'll talk about things like the internal combustion engine, the importance of that in, for planes, for automobiles. A little map on page 617 that shows you industrialization in Europe by the time of World War I in 1914. And then at the end of that section, it's going to talk about some rebellions against industrialization, specifically the idea of communism. Karl Marx, Frederick Engels write the Communist Manifesto in the late 1840s. And for our audio chat next week, I have uploaded some excerpts from the Communist Manifesto. It's just a 2-page document for you to read, and there's some questions on the back of that. That's what we're going to talk about during our chat for this week. The Communist Manifesto rails against the bourgeoisie. Marx and Engels say that, all of human history has been a struggle amongst classes, and eventually there will be a massive uprising by the working class, known as the proletariat, and they will throw off the chains of the bourgeoisie, the factory owners, and make a better society. So we'll talk about that on Wednesday. We're skipping section 2 of chapter 20, the emergence of mass society. We're going to go to section 3 then, which is called the national state and democracy. And that's going to focus on, all the different European nations and how they're adjusting to life in the later 1800s. And we'll talk about Germany once it's united with Otto von Bismarck and William II. It'll talk about the continual problems for Austria-Hungary with so many different nationalities under the rule of the crown. We'll talk about Russia with Nicholas II, worker revolts in Russia, which leads to Bloody Sunday in 1905, which then leads to these legislative assemblies called the Dumas that are brought into existence but not used very often. And so slowly we're going to work our way up to Russian involvement in World War I. It does hit a little bit about the aftermath of the U.S. Civil War in Canada. And for the United States, it even talks about our actions in Hawaii. And then in the next chapter that we're going to, we'll continue with the United States actions in the Philippines, like in the Spanish-American War. And at the end of section 3, it talks about the Balkan Wars of the early 1900s. Now, those are precursors of World War I. And then I haven't figured out how I'm going to do this yet. We're going to have an assessment sometime next week over the items that you read for chapter 19. I think it's going to be short answer questions. Hopefully by the time that we have our chat next Wednesday, I'll have a better idea what that's going to look like. It's not something that's going to take you a long time to do. It's not something that you're going to be able to use your note. You are going to be able to use your notes, your book, because I can't be there watching you do this test. So that's coming probably towards the end of the week next week. Section 1 of chapter 21, which is imperialism, I'm going to assign to you next week as well and have that due on Monday. So there are a couple more things coming at you next week. And so chapter 21 goes into imperialism. And it starts out with imperialism in Southeast Asia. It'll talk about the British. It'll talk about the French and French Indochina, which is known as Vietnam today. And then it'll talk about the United States, like I mentioned in the Spanish-American War. And then it'll also mention indirect and direct rule. Those are ways that colonial powers either put their own people in charge of governmental affairs in these nations, or that would be direct rule, or an indirect rule. They kind of left the people in charge. Indirect rule would cost less. It would seem like it's less of the big bad country and to rule things. But it's, direct rule gives those powers like Britain, like France, like Germany, those imperialist powers, gives them more of a direct hand in the way that things are going to play out in those nations. So that's coming next week as well. And those of you who are with me in 4L, which is almost all of you, we covered imperialism back in 4L. That's about it. So, like I said, there is more coming at you this upcoming week. I've really enjoyed the discussion boards. Just continue doing those. The discussion board question for this upcoming week is putting you in the position of being a worker in a newly unionized factory. What are your demands, and how do you ask for those demands? And do you ask for all the demands that you have? Or all the demands that you want, or do you kind of put together things piecemeal? You guys have done a great job getting assignments to me, participating in the discussion boards, participating in the chats. I did start uploading assignments on Teams, like some of you had said that you wanted. When you go to turn things in, I don't care how you turn it in. You can turn it into me via email. You can turn it in via Teams. Just somehow get it to me. If you have any questions, email me or direct chat with me in Teams, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I hope you guys have a great weekend. I miss you, and I'll talk to you soon.